Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Orita Podcast featuring Matt Bahr from Fairing, formerly Enquire Labs. We don't know if Matt formerly had a different name or not, so we're going to go with Matt. I am Aaron Schwartz, one of the co-founders and co-CEOs of Orita, along with Daniel Brady, who is also here. He has a PhD, so we call him Dr. Brady on this podcast. Orita builds AI segments for hundreds of awesome Klaviyo brands. We also partner with Postpilot. We help people understand who's actually listening and who isn't. But today we get to talk to Matt about Fairing. He also is the one who connected me and DB originally. So thanks. And yeah, Matt, let me get out of the way. I'd love for you to give a thanks. So I'd love for you to give a proper. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a thanks or not.
Let's just be very clear. Everything was very good in my life before co-founding Orita, and I am just right now. Matt, hi. Thanks for joining us. Can you give a much better introduction to yourself and your background, and then we'll kind of take it away?
Yeah, I'm Matt Bahr. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fairing. We power post-purchase surveys. Huge focus on attribution, helping brands understand the top of their funnel. We also help solve CRO personalization and a ton of other use cases with just the post-purchase survey medium in general. I've been in e-commerce for sadly about 15 years or so. Started off on the brand side for about 8 years and then moved to the software side back in 2017. Fairing has evolved the name. We were Enquire Labs prior to that, which DB knows. We were Hody, which was a same-day delivery platform that never really found product market fit. But one of those customers kind of led us to the survey solution that we have today. So it was all part of the journey, but excited to be here. I've known both of you for a bit now.
All right, this is great. Matt, I want to go back to the brand side. I completely forgot that about you. Like I know what LinkedIn says, but can you walk through what your brand journey was and what made you kind of switch from the brand side to the tech side?
Yeah, my startup journey. So I moved to New York in 2010. I worked for Yext, which is now public. Doing cold call sales. The fun story there is the first day. This is 2010. I got, I think, 3 deals in my cold call sales cohort. No one else in the 20 of us got any deals. So I have this like very vivid memory of calling my mom on my walk home, being like, "I'm going to make so much money. It's commission based. I am awesome." The next day, I got 2 deals, still number 1 in my class. And then for the next 8 weeks, I didn't get another deal. So I had to see the door. So that was my kind of foray into startups. And when I left that company, I ended up interning for a few places. One of them was called Local Mind, which Lenny, I don't know if you guys listen to Lenny's podcast. So it was Lenny's startup that got bought by Airbnb. I was doing a ton of like analytics and just blog posting for Local Mind and Lenny and his co-founder. And then another company called Spinback, which again, this is 2010. They were building a widget that would go to your PDP and would allow customers to share your products to Facebook. Like that was like all the rage. They ended up getting bought by Buddy Media, which then got bought by Salesforce. And in that process, I got introduced to an individual who'd been in the e-commerce space for about 20 years, and he wanted to build a consultancy. I spent about 3 years with him, and we were just advising brands. So I kind of got my MBA in e-commerce from 2011 to 2014. And then I was the first operating employee at Master and Dynamic, this headphone brand that we scaled from, there was 4 of us to about, I think, 40 employees in the first 2 years. And then, I left that company in 2016, enamored with same-day delivery at the time. I think if I could blame TechCrunch and the media for convincing me that same-day delivery was going to be the future, Jeff Bezos over there. But I don't think I would have met DB just because I think we got connected through my co-founder because DB was at 1-1. So that was pretty much my journey. But I started off on the brand side, which I think gives me a ton of just kind of clarity and kind of empathy into the e-com marketer's brain, which has definitely helped a ton in building Fairing.
Just to be clear,
I want to say that
the empathy
to defend
is
Bezos here. Hold on, Aaron. Amazon now does have same day delivery. They just started it a few months ago. As my friend who's built out that operational product, and I was like, oh, okay, like 10 years after all of us try to build it ourselves.
Matt, I was going to say your empathy is why I think you've always underpriced your product, and you're just like too much on the brand side, even though you guys create a ton of value.
Just giving away.
There is something to what you said about the consulting. So DB, maybe you can like give just a quick minute on your background for folks who are listening about like you and Zach were also doing this. So you came from 1-1 and then you were also like consulting, trying to figure it out. And
we were at a slightly different, initially more successful, then just equally as unsuccessful same-day delivery company as Matt. And And then Zach and I went to and Zach's our third co-founder, our CTO. We went to go be part of ML teams and me lead ML teams like at other companies, and we really wanted to be, while that was fine, we wanted to be in a place where ML was like the essential part of what we were doing, which was like around 2015, 2016. So this is way before the AI craze that's here now. But we didn't know exactly what we wanted to build. And so we also decided, kind of similar to Matt's early experience, that like we wanted to consult to basically see what was repeatable. Like going into one brand is great, but then you might like totally over index on what that brand cares about or what the founders care about at that brand. And so we wanted to be like, hey, if we hear this problem over and over again, that will give us a signal to actually then build like a proper product.
How did you guys meet?
Yeah, I mean, I think we met through Kurt, who I worked with at Hello Alfred, and I don't remember exactly how you met him, Matt. I don't remember that connection. But since then, since I've worked with Kurt very closely, I sat next to him while we were both at Hello Alfred for a long time. We were very good friends and great colleagues.
All right, so Matt, what was the idea of Enquire Labs? Like, I know you said it came out from a customer, but like, what was the initial insight? And then we'll kind of go through the journey and where it's gone.
Yeah, we were building the same day platform. We were pretty much personalizing e-commerce sites for same day. The long story short, if anyone ever wants to talk to me about this, is that most consumers, unless they're ordering food or mainly something that's a consumable in that sense, like they actually don't need to get shoes same day. Like the UPS experience is actually a better, more optimal experience than having to meet someone that hands you a bag, at least kind of in the more metro areas. So that's kind of our big learning. While we were still kind of grinding away on that, one of the brands that we were working with, it's called Cara Sport. They're a bag company. The CEO of that company here, still in New York, they were doing a ton of gifting. It was probably like $30,000 or $40,000 a month of just gifting to influencers, and they were getting all these posts from the influencers, so it was working. He would log into Google Analytics, and he wouldn't see any of the vanity URLs used. He'd go to Shopify, he wouldn't see any of the codes used. But everyone was posting, so the impression volume was there. So while we were just kind of chatting about his business, he was explaining this problem. We're doing all this gifting, it's not working, or I don't know if it's working. And I just kind of off the cuff was like, hey, just like, here's a link, go on a Google form to your thank you page on Shopify, just ask your customers and just like run it for a week or two and see if it's driving any conversions. It's like a very simple solution to that problem. And at the time, there wasn't any way to do that within the Shopify space. And a couple months later, he came back to me and he's like, just so you know, like, I'm opening this every day, all day. Like, it's incredible, but it's not connected to the order. So at the time, you can't do this anymore, but it lived in an iframe. So you pretty much would just get a timestamp and a response. You wouldn't get the person who submitted it. So that was kind of, I remember so clearly turning to Kurt and just being like, how do you feel about taking 2 weeks off? We've already kind of been building on top of Shopify's APIs for the delivery stuff, and just building a post-purchase survey that all it needs to do is one question, and it just needs to connect to the order, like the most basic thing there. So we built that in about 2 weeks. It went live in early April in a beta, and we went live in May 8th of 2018. And very much just like, it was just like, oh, this is gonna be sweet. We're gonna scale this to $5,000 a month. It's gonna pay for like dinners and beers and fund the same day delivery thing. And a few months in, we started just getting some like really big brand names installing us without us talking. And so our first like 20 customers, we got those all through my network just in New York. I was doing a ton of consulting kind of with the same day to just get money in the door. And we started seeing some big brands. I think the biggest one at the time was Outerknown, which is still a customer of ours. That was like 2 weeks after we launched. And it took us, unfortunately, about a year to really do a little bit of reflection and understand that, hey, this is what product market fit is. We should just keep doubling down on here. But that was really our journey to building the MVP and getting that out the door. And then, yeah, it was pretty much a side project until Q4 of 21. So about 3.5 years, we were doing a ton of consulting, kind of abandoned the same day thing. And then we raised a bit of money in 2021. We'd be like, okay, we have $500,000 in ARR. We have a lot of well-known brands. Like, we're ready to scale this.
I remember that. That's when you and I met.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yes.
My question for you, Matt, is how awesome was it for Kurt to build something in 2 weeks, given that he's never built anything that fast before since then?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks, but initially it was going to be only a couple of days.
Okay. Yeah. I'll do this in an hour. 2 weeks later.
I think that if you can find an engineer that underpredicts consistently, I would love to talk to them.
I just take whatever Zach says and I multiply it by 0.1, and then that I cut it in half before I tell Aaron.
I'm vibe coding this right now. I'm going to go compete with you guys and get it done in 2 hours.
There you go.
All right, Matt. So what does a business do today? And then I want to dive in on like, how do people use all the data, and like having all this information is cool, but so what? So like, what is, you guys switch, obviously same business, but Enquire Labs rebranded as Fairing.
Yep.
What is Fairing now?
Yeah, so we've gone into more use cases. We're definitely still focused. It's funny, during the cycle of the company, it was attribution to start. And then we started to build something that looked very survey-esque. I think at the time, excited by Qualtrics, kept getting bought and sold back in 21 and 22. And it was like, we can build a better surveying platform. We're still doing a little bit of that. Like we have a landing page feature coming out next week. We just launched an upgraded NPS feature about a month ago. But kind of the majority of our time is still around solving the problem of top of funnel. Like, what is driving customers to purchase from a channel perspective? So marketers today have a lot of tools at their disposal to measure Google, Meta, kind of TikTok, you name it. They can run holdout tests. They can run an MMM. They can do basic platform reported metrics on that side. But once they start working with in the audio space or influencers or mediums that are a bit more ephemeral, but also have some staying power in the sense of how they work, the measurement gets really difficult. And that's still kind of our North Star that we're trying to continue to solve. And that's kind of where we believe a lot of our kind of alpha will be, in the sense of surveys. There's this classical SaaS joke where SaaS is often just like a database and a bunch of forms. And like, we're probably the best example of that. But with this focus, it allows us to kind of do more interesting things when we start to normalize the data and can provide more value there.
So I'm a brand and I'm trying to understand what is driving purchases, full stop.
Yep.
Like, is that the easiest way to simplify it? And so
Exactly.
am I understanding the influence of different channels? Am I under, like, what do I do with that data? Is it, oh, okay, I should like change my spend here, or we're actually over investing in this channel, it's not working, so I should do some testing and iterating? Like, how do people use the data?
Yeah, exactly. It's really to help optimize spend allocation. And there's a spectrum of value when it comes to different channels. So if we think about TV typically takes a bit of time to understand if it's working or not. A lot of brands don't want to invest $100,000 for 2 months, 3 months while a holdout's happening in some incrementality tests, and just have no insight into, is this working or not? So that's just an example where how did you hear about us or post-purchase survey can really start to bring in early signal into, is this channel working or not? And when the channel is working, if you layer on your spend with the channel percentage data, like, you'll see a very clear correlation across. We started to spend, and then a few days later, we saw the responses come up. And if it's not working, like, this is kind of what we're trying to triangulate now. Like, we have brands that will spend a ton on TV and it'll just be completely flat. And then we'll show them like 6 other anonymous brands where it's like, this is providing top of funnel and it's not for you. So maybe adjust your creative strategy, or maybe TV isn't the channel, or the campaign strategy needs to be updated. So that's the general kind of core use case. The stuff that's exciting now that we're doing is, like, one of our goals at Fairing is marketers never actually have to touch their attribution survey. They just turn Fairing on. And we can use with our data set and with third parties, kind of enrich and build this in real time and get better output. That's kind of what we're working on now. And we have something cool launching in a few weeks in the kind of YouTube space, where, if you're advertising with influencers or creators on YouTube, you won't actually have to update Fairing. It'll just be automatically updated so that you're going to get the best possible output. So that's kind of like the journey we're on, and really focused on how do we get the best, most trusted data to help brands understand, again, top of funnel.
I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I've talked to Matt and Kurt about this a billion times, is like, especially in that hard to measure space, is that like a lot of companies are kind of building where the lampposts are. Some channels are really successful because they are really successful, but they're also can be successful because like it's the easiest to quote unquote build measurement systems for. And so like using a post-purchase tool is like a really great way to like understand a more broad layout of like what's going on, especially for channels like connected things, like, which can have big bills. I think another really interesting thing that I think about too is that like whether you're doing holdout testing or you have like some sort of last touch multi-touch attribution system or whatever it is that you use, the really interesting thing about post-purchase surveys, it's what the customer thinks is what drove them there. And so like a last touch model could say that it was Meta, but then if they said that they saw a billboard, then that tells you like psychologically what is driving customers to their website and what is there's remembering and what is resonating with them. And so once again, Matt, to your point about like the staying power of certain mediums, it's like maybe they have seen 50 ads on Meta in this time, but it was really something about being mentioned on podcasts that really captured that, and that stayed with them for weeks. to then like lead up to this bubbling up. And that's why they said podcasts on that post-purchase survey.
And our argument is that is where the budget should kind of be funneled towards, is those more memorable channels that are driving that. Yeah, exactly.
Matt, are there other, like, kind of following DB's lamppost analogy, which he uses once every other week in internal meetings for Orita, because he's a smart data guy?
I have so many lampposts. Just
it's really helpful.
I have a
He's
lamppost on my desk that I just bring it up again. And like,
but kind of following that, what are the channels that like you have kind of been surprising even to you, right? Like you mentioned connected TV. Are there other channels as well where you're like, oh, actually, these are like, you can see it across enough brands where you have a deep belief that there's actually like much more room for outperformance in those channels?
Yeah, I wouldn't say any that I guess at this point surprised me. I think the influencer space is probably the most underutilized, especially if you can get a flywheel going with like great UGC or influential content that then can put spend behind. I think that's kind of the easiest path to more hyper growth right now. But that's typically the channel that brands will not think is working very well. And then they start using fairing and they're like, okay, this is driving a very meaningful portion of my revenue. And I just wasn't seeing it before. So, and we talked to, I can think of like 3 brands off the top of my head that are above 20 million in GMV, and they actually don't even spend on Meta. They've just cracked influencers, and that is the core. It's about 65% of their net new customers. We help measure that. And then they're not like, I think part of it is they just don't want to be dependent on the machine in that sense. And they've just found a profitable business model in this new channel. But that requires thinking outside the box. Like it requires not using the measurement tools that everyone uses that are built for these kind of existing platforms.
Is your customer at that point the head of marketing, the head of data, head of performance? Like who's actually tapping into this? Because I could see like the value kind of directing workflows in a lot of different parts of a company.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the company. The much larger companies, our champion is very often like someone in kind of the offline marketing. It's funny, it's called offline. A lot of it is still digital, but it's typically like head of offline. It's the person who's managing TV, maybe a bit of brand, podcasts, influencers, all of those channels. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned kind of influencer, right? That's underutilized. Go a little bit deeper into TV. When you think about like connected TV or like TV as a good channel, is it the type of thing where it's like, it actually depends on what platform you're using? Or is it this works for a brand or it just doesn't? Or, it's too early and so few brands are testing it out right now. And like there's opportunity to go explore.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of nuance in TV more than any other channel, I'd argue. The first part is from a creative side, and these costs are coming down at a pretty aggressive rate. But there was always a bit of friction spending $25 at the minimum to get good creative. The brands that we see that operate the best TV campaigns, they're very, very often using a mix of linear and connected TV. Right now, it's quite rare that someone's solely spending on CTV and that ends up being like a highly profitable channel. Most brands will see it more as like a branding. Hey, we're not trying to extract as much out of this. We want to be on TV. Maybe it's helping funnel retargeting traffic or whatever that may be. But definitely TV is the hardest one to crack. We've done a lot of analysis with the CTV providers. And I'd say about 80% of them using the post-purchase survey data helps the measurement equation for TV. And then 20%, it does not. And that may be a function of where TV is in the buyer journey. Hey, we're not like hitting these people in the correct way. Or it's just that TV is not working for that brand. But for something like, I would say Meta can work for everyone. I think if you have a hard time getting Meta working, it's more of maybe like a creative or more tactical strategy. TV is a totally different ballgame.
With Meta, you're like, it's a you problem. They're pretty good at what they do.
I don't want to like from an inventory perspective, they have, there's a lot of users.
Matt, I have a question, for your brand, obviously the post-purchase survey is post-purchase, and that can apply to new customers. It can apply to existing ones. Like how have your brands like thought about that sort of thing? Like, do they think about that sort of journey that maybe the first purchase you came in on something and the second one you came in on something else? Or is it just like overall just fitting into the budget? How does that work?
Yeah. So we recommend splitting the questions out as far as how you capture this data. Cool. Asking a returning customer how they heard about you is just going to not be a great user experience. So we're definitely more so focused on new customer acquisition just as a function of what we do. From a modeling perspective, like our approach has always been very much kind of a simple Occam's razor approach to solving this problem. I think brands can get really far with like very minimal click data and a PPS versus trying to capture every click in the buying journey if we're thinking about MTA. And that's just because every click is not every click. We actually don't know what clicks we're not capturing. So there's gaps in those journeys that are just immeasurable to that point. So we definitely recommend a more simplified approach. But on the returning customer retention side, questions like what led you back to XYZ brand is super valuable, especially when you start to pair that with other questions like a persona question or anything that helps you identify more about that user. And then you can, hey, how do we go find more of these customers to increase kind of LTV across them? So that's typically how we think about it. But what led you back is going to have email. It's going to have SMS. It's going to have some more channels that might be driving those repeat users.
How do you think about the mix for brands to that point, like even bringing in the email, right, of like paid and like kind of own channels?
What do you mean by that?
Do you help brands understand like the full journey at that point? Or like when earlier we were talking about how you might recommend that they spend slightly differently. Sometimes is it, hey, we shouldn't actually be mixing dollars on performance, but actually you could spend less on performance because your own channels are performing better, maybe better. But
yeah, we definitely focus more on the new customer performance channels. Than the retention side of things. Retention buyer journey is a bit complicated in the sense of, as you guys know, medium can be very much like the channel and the discovery element is what drives that new user acquisition. Like if you don't know the brand, nothing happens. On the retention side, a good example is like, I don't know if you could tell you were commenting on my skin earlier, Aaron. I've been using Caldera Lab for like 2 months. It's like the only time in my life I've been like consistently using moisturizer and I think a serum, and I keep reordering from them, but it's just because I keep running out. It has nothing to do with any emails I'm getting or anything. It's just like, I'm a big fan. So it's a little bit different in the sense of, is it a replenishment consumable in that sense? And the person's just coming back. Like Bombas, for example, they have on their returning customer questions like, I just love Bombas. And like a pretty large portion of those customers are always selecting that because they just want more socks. And so same kind of way in which we're extracting the data from the customer, but very different from a utilization perspective.
To that point, I'm very curious because I know this is something that you guys have like thought a lot about, and I'm sure it's still something I'm actually curious about how you counsel this for brands who think about it. Like, how do you guys handle like response rates and stuff? If 50% of people are not actually like, answering a post-purchase survey, is that bad? Is that good? Like, how do you counsel brands when they see those sorts of numbers, and how they can think about extrapolating their total spend budget when only X percent of responses are actually going through?
Yeah. So our target for all of our customers is 30% from a response rate perspective. Once we hit 30%, our ability to predict non-responders above like 2,000 transactions there's a very small margin of error in that. So it's kind of like our holy grail. And the way we're able to kind of easily do that is we can just run a simulation. We have order total. We have a lot of attributes about users who didn't respond. And it's pretty much like our ability to predict those attributes. So that's really kind of the first part, is getting everyone to that level. Even at 20%, it's like a 5% margin of error. So it's not crazy at all in that context. 30, 35, 40 is really when it starts to drop. We work with brands like Thorn and 8 Sleep who have like 85% response rates, which is actually just a function of they're not on Shopify and they can do pop-ups and change the user experience on how to capture that data. But at that point, you're capturing like a very highly accurate sample that can be predicted to the whole. So that's the first part.
And Matt, if a brand is getting started with you guys and their response rate is 15% or 20%, what do you advise them to do?
Yeah, so it depends on the brand. The first thing is, and just for clarity for anyone listening here, like varying questions 99% of the time are in moment. So we don't want to be asking, how did you hear about us 2 weeks after someone buys? There's going to be some memory decay and kind of other bias that gets thrown into that output. So we're always asking front and center right after the conversion happens. We work with some brands who aren't even in e-commerce. We're in an onboarding flow. Like we're literally part of their user journey in that sense. That's kind of step one. But from a response rate perspective, the biggest driver of dropping the response rate is having the survey module not be front and center. That's kind of the biggest function of that. So if you accidentally drag our app block below the fold, like you're going to get about a 10% response rate. So that's typically the first thing. Interestingly enough, we've run a lot of analysis on like response options and like all of the other variables that could go into play. They don't really have an effect in the response rate. They do have a little bit of effect in our ability to extrapolate. Like Of course, you're adding just more larger denominator to that number if you have 20 responses versus 5. But the main thing is placement and, funny enough, load time. And both of these are in the same exact realm. It's like somebody clicks buy, we have their attention. If we lose that for a couple hundred milliseconds, the response rate's going to really start to drop.
Matt, what are the best questions brands should ask? Like the one, and I'm trying to abstract a little bit from fairing and just like, if you're a small brand and you're trying to, like, you're picking up the phone, you're calling your customers, obviously super valuable. Where'd you hear about us? Is there anything else that people should be like, that's actually like a close second or close third?
Yeah. So there's 3 or 4 that we always recommend. And they fit different verticals. Depending on the size of the brand, this could change. But kind of that attribution measurement layer, we have how did you hear about us and what led you to X for returning customers. So those are split. For brands who think they have a higher consideration window, what or how long ago did you hear about Bombas or whatever the brand name is really helpful. The example there is like if you are optimizing Meta on like a 7-day click and your average person is taking 2 months to buy, you might be training their algorithm on a time window that is not optimal for the buying journey. So that's kind of a good one. You don't necessarily need to have it on all the time, but knowing that you can show an ad and people will buy, 50% of people buy within the first week is really helpful. That covers kind of that attribution measurement. 90% of our customers, that is their top priority. That is why they come to Fairy. The second question, which is my personal favorite, which is which of these best describes you? So this is a great question to pipe into Klaviyo, honestly, for personalization. It is a persona building question. Brands, it's coming back around. I feel like a couple of years ago, brands didn't have personas built out internally. They were kind of just vibing it. Now they're coming back. And the way to think about that question is how do we kind of reverse engineer our personas to a question that lets the customer self-select into one. There's, again, a spectrum of how easy this is to do. Fashion's probably the hardest. If you're selling a technical product, it's like, are you a professional or a hobbyist? Like that's probably the easiest one. So anything that helps you do that. And then that can be fed into LTV models, like channels. Hey, these customers come from these channels. So that's a really great one to slice and dice. And then the last question that we recommend is a CRO related question. We don't do anything super special with this yet. But how is your shopping experience? Those types of questions. I think our recommended one was there anything difficult about your shopping experience? If they click yes, you ask what? And we've had brands save tens of millions of dollars just like piping this data to their digital product team and just like endlessly finding things to improve and then increasing conversion rates. Yeah, one brand, it just kept coming up, site speed. They focused on it. You can see their site speed come down. You can see mentions of that go down, and you can see their conversion rate go up.
That's cool. I could see this influencing your customer journey on the site, the landing page, the information, the pricing, the merchandising, the imagery, you name it. That's very cool. I want to switch gears a little bit. You mentioned
to start asking you guys questions.
No, you're curious about my skincare routine. We'll talk about it. You mentioned the idea of marketers not touching attribution. Can you go a little further? Because I also want to talk a little bit about how you guys are building and your product velocity, and like again, have been privileged to see the business over many years and see how fast you guys are building now. But I'm curious, like I actually want to peel that back a little bit. What does it mean for a marketer not to even have to touch attribution? And then I'll have some follow-ups there.
Yeah, the one of our advisors who was a methodologist at Meta and then at Airbnb, like a couple of years ago, biggest recommendation to us, which we did not follow at the time, was do not let anyone touch their survey. Like they are not experts in methodology. They are going to add bias and make it more difficult for the customer to end up like responding to get a really good output. So we're now in a place where we're starting to create the inroads to that, where there will be a version of Fairing where you actually can't edit to start. It'll just be your attribution question. We'll know what channels you're advertising on based on some third-party inputs and just kind of listening, using that other input to then refine that. And so that's kind of the holy grail of where we're trying to go. That unlocks a much easier normalization layer across the tens of millions of responses we're capturing every month. That we can get more predictive. It opens up a lot of doors, but also will give our customer at the end of the day more confidence in some of the modeling that we're starting to do. So that's kind of the output, but it's difficult. Like one of our more heavily used features is like this predictive auto suggests, where user starts to type and we're surfacing whether it's influencers or podcasts or TV shows in this auto suggest module. So just like fully automating that from day one is difficult. And that's why we're starting to ingest third parties and build something more predictive where we can almost know what the user is about to type before they start typing.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing just as a comment there is in the survey world, whether survey or psychology, that there's like 100 years of understanding how you can bias someone by asking questions in specific ways and how to repeat questions and the ordering and all that kind of stuff. And so it's one of those things where obviously the fact that the Fairing team is trying to automate it and take all that learning to do it for you is such a big deal, is that like you don't even know how much you can put your thumb on the scale if you just started on your own. But like if you've studied psychology as an undergrad, like it's like what half your classes are about is about that concept of how much bias there can be introduced if you're not really careful about this sort of stuff.
And a good example is like all the time you'll see on LinkedIn, it's like post-purchase surveys aren't accurate. And like, that's very much like an N of one problem. Like maybe you, when you answer them, are not asking or answering them accurately.
Once again, just like Meta, it's a you problem.
At scale, with randomization, with other methodologies, we can remove all of that bias from the output and get to a very predictive place. And that just comes to kind of the, dare I say, ignorance around kind of to what DB was alluding to. It's like, there are so many ways to like slightly touch the scale. And that's what we're trying to kind of automate.
What, out of curiosity, if I want to get better internal rankings from my colleagues, what question should I ask? How should I phrase it?
Have the bad choices really low at the bottom so that no one wants to scroll all the way down.
Page 2.
Am I amazing? Really great. Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your favorite employee at Orita? It just happens that your name starts with an A, so you're going to be. Don't randomize those.
Yeah. Put it in alphabetical order. Because Zach will rightfully be last. Yeah, exactly.
You guys are idiots. This is great. Matt, one of the like annoying questions is why can't Claude just do this? Yada, yada. You've so far answered a couple really interesting things, right? Obviously the like doing the methodology right and making sure you're not putting the thumb on the scale. What are you starting to see across having like this massive data set that is beneficial? Like are you starting to see stuff? Like you guys just have an insane amount of data. You talked about tens of millions of responses a month. Like, are you starting to see like AI journeys change in terms of like people coming in and using AI to find brands, or like, what are some of the bigger things that you're seeing across the entire data set?
Yeah, AI, like we're arguably in a better position to track AI right now than most, just given the nature of how those purchases happen. So that's definitely been a crazy spike. For some verticals and some brands, like some are definitely, there's some verticals that aren't driving as fast. I think I have this here.
I was going to say, we're not going to check the data, but if you can give like any hunches that you're seeing.
Can I give a hunch? Is it more research oriented, like more considered purchases where the AI stuff is more impactful?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a lot of purchases where like the supplement space, for example, which again,
there you go.
Where people are more concerned, they're trying, it's not a taste thing, it's like a safety thing, or a problem solution thing. Those are definitely the ones that are taking off the most, where like fashion is less so right now.
That's funny.
But the other interesting thing is like we use Claude religiously at Fairing, not really into OpenAI, at least from a development perspective. Like ChatGPT has like 85% market share on the consumer side of things, where you would think Claude has some of that. Claude is like way below Gemini and Grok and everything. Like nobody on the consumer side is using Claude for product discovery right now. So that's definitely an interesting one that we've noticed.
So you're seeing a ramp up, and you're seeing a ramp up in particular, like maybe more quickly with considered purchases or things that you ingest. So you want to make sure for safety. Is there any advice you have for brands and like how they should be thinking about, like, if you're running a brand today, would you be changing your strategies at all and like over-investing in AEO, GEO, which I haven't heard those terms in 6 months, but 6 months ago it was the thing. Were there other changes that you would make if you're a brand right now, given like how consumers are discovering?
Yeah, the data that we've seen is like the models are fairly recent. So I think contrary to SEO, like where time and kind of the legacy nature of a domain definitely affects the page rank and your ability to rank, that's definitely less so in kind of AEO right now. So with that said, like there might not be as big of you might not need to be running and sprinting to it if you're thinking about long-term. As a marketer, I would be paying heavily attention to it and just like keeping a really quick pulse on just some basic rankings and just use Profound or one of the other AEO ranking tools to understand where you are and like see if there's an opportunity. I do think I know for a fact we have customers who are definitely doing things and getting really good outcomes from them. And we also have customers who are doing things and not getting anything. And it's kind of just like this early SEO, hacky, tactical, kind of who's going to navigate the way. And so it definitely takes a type of marketer, I think, right now to be leaning into the AI stuff more so than most.
Matt, what else should we ask you? Like, you see so much and you're seeing across the ecosystem and all these changes. Are there any other, like, we have, 10, 15 minutes left. Are there other trends that you think are worth like diving into, or anything else that you think?
The thing that I'd like to talk to you guys about is the future of the brand or e-commerce marketer. And that's something that we spend a lot of time in the sense of like, we're launching our MCP server in a couple of weeks to give agents access to data and kind of mine it and do some really exciting things. And it's thrown around. It's like brands aren't even going to log into Fairing, and they're not going to log into Orita. It's all going to be through an MCP. And then I hear a podcast with the Every guys a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, I'm actually like using Codex as in-app browser and navigating the GUI with the LLM. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that use case yet. So I think how brands end up using these products, that's something we're obviously very interested in. I'm very interested in, and like, is the future user, like Fairing has source of truth data. Like if we think about the action side of things and the data or system of record kind of side of things, and like, we're now focused on how do we get the best system of, like, how do we get the best data that the agents can use long term? How do we feed that into the agent decisioning? So that's kind of our general hypothesis in this space. And I'm curious how you guys, like, is someone just going to turn on Orita and Klaviyo and your ESP just gets the revenue?
Yeah, I think that where we both kind of align conceptually in this kind of space is we've both built expert systems for use collecting this sort of information, both within and across a bunch of different brands. And for ours, it's like looking at all these signals that is not just like some sort of LLM, Gen AI type way of doing it. And how can that context of those expert systems be used? And the context of how those expert systems being used traditionally was like, for us, it's helping some marketers make some segmentation decisions on who they're going to send a campaign to or who's going to enter this flow. For you, it's like about maybe on reallocating a budget this month or whatever. And it's like, it just might get rolled up to being consumed and processed in a way by an agent that then literally the term is context that they do to grab in to then once again serve that information along with maybe other sources and other ways to like for the human to make that sort of strategic decision. And whether that human is like has Codex open and is coding themselves live, or they're just like, the whole point is that they don't ever have to do any of that sort of stuff anymore. And they just like are interacting with like a text interface, like some like 80s RPG where there's kind of like solving all the problems that way, I think is probably more about like where those operators are at and what works best for them. But I think the whole point of both of our companies is kind of like, these are problems that can't be solved in those ways that are being rapidly developed. There's like fundamentally access to the data, the types of algorithms that are being used in order to make those decisions are like fundamentally orthogonal to those sorts of things. And so how can we then provide that information for people that want to incorporate the sort of special information that we generate and context that we have into their daily workflow? That's what I think.
And I think that the exciting thing for both of us too is like the value of Fairing in an agentic world as far as the Fairing data goes up, because the agent can spend 24/7 mining their Fairing account looking for anomalies, new creators that are referring to brands. It can go tap into Shopify and like see what products are being purchased by those. Like there's this kind of endless data mining opportunity. We're 6 months away from, I think, getting closer to that. But
yeah, I mean, I think the thing too, and what you'll see if you go into our website now, there's like there's so much more content that we have on enablement and usage and what is successful for other brands. And because like, obviously people want to use us for better targeting to make more revenue, and machine learning is better than that at humans. And so like, that's why it works. But it's also kind of like, to your point about where the agentic stuff can fit in, is that like, at some point, what you want is something that's like constantly probing and constantly exploring, constantly looking at what's available there. And if now you're a team of like 4 marketers, but then you have at your fingertips 400 agents that can kind of like explore all of those different scenarios and different contexts, and then the really great tools that you have at your disposal should all become more valuable, right? Not just because of the data sets, but because it's like, these are real useful signals. They're not just like a slapdash slightly puts 2 things slightly closer together. So therefore, pay Shopify $10, pay some Shopify app $10 a month. Like that's why like people are talking about how they Claude code away X, Y, and Z, right? And they're going crazy about it, but like they're going, it's like, well, maybe those things should have never really been around in the first. Like they're not really that helpful if you can just code them away. Versus like unique data, unique ability to generate insights on data that's collected on experiments you have running. Like that to me is like the big difference.
Yeah, the survey, like the way that we are starting to position is like the actual survey itself is like 10% of the product. And that's really like how you're asking the question and capturing the data. It's all the nuance that goes into it that allows you to trust it where all the value is.
DB, you kind of mentioned the like agents side of things, and it can be 4 people with 40 agents, but this still goes back to the expert system. Matt, I think the most visited page on our site right now is why can't Claude do what Orita does? And literally it's like Claude can go tell you what every single blog that was ever written about email marketing and what a segment should be. But unless you've actually seen the proprietary data of like customer engagement from Ascend, and you've seen thousands of brands and tens of thousands of strategies, you actually don't have it. And so the question that we wrestle with, and that is like really interesting right now, and there's tension, is there's so much investment and excitement about agents. And like going back to something DB said is like ML can do things that a generic human can't do, obviously.
Yeah.
But like an agent will go convert Matt better than any human could. An agent will figure out, does Matt want 8% discount or 10% discount? Should he get an email, then a text, and an email, then a text, or a text and an email, and then an email, and an email, right? And so like all these journeys, the harder question, and the question that we're trying to answer for all of our brands is like, should we even sick the agents on Matt right now? Or is that a local optimization versus like, is today the best possible day to convert Matt? Or should you wait a day, a week, a quarter? The complexity is that like, when you message Matt in any own channel, he can unsubscribe, right? An ad, you can keep hitting him up, right? You can find different ways. But like that person can choose to end that relationship. And in an own channel, like if you over email, you hurt deliverability. Yeah. And so for us, it's like, we think about building our products to be purpose built for that marketer. So it's like, you'll come to our dashboard to like get insights and to get the FAQs and whatever you need. But really, we want it to be segments in Klaviyo that are just outperformant. It's like you should live in Klaviyo if that's your platform, and we're building obviously into PostScript and other platforms. And so it's like you live there, cool, right? But like actually the like expert system thing is like, I think those are the only companies that are ultimately going to be investable. And like the companies not investable, like that's not the meaning, like customers will ask about it and just go build it themselves because they literally can.
They can't. Yeah.
And I think just to put a fine point on it, you can ask Claude if it can do what we do, and it will tell you no. And so like that is like the best. It was like ask Claude itself. Yeah.
That's
like
awesome.
they
basically emailed me and was like, hey, I also asked Claude and here was the output. And I was like, cool, this is great. Claude's like, can't. So
I should create a prompt and just like sending output of that to a Slack channel every day. Like give me a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Just to make sure our product team is pushing as hard as they possibly can.
So you guys are building faster than ever before. That's exciting. Anything else you want to share about the future? Or you kind of walk through some stuff, but I want to create a little space for that.
Yeah, no, it's like the themes that we're really focused on is kind of data normalization. It's predictive question asking, really with the goal of like getting the better output on that. I'm very excited about kind of the agent side of things, just because our data is like the fun part about surveys and why I think the category has grown so fast is it's very easy to interpret. If you give someone a post-purchase survey data set, like most people can make sense of it, where if you give them access to Google Analytics or PostHog, whatever they're using on the more first-party click-based side of things, it's like, what does this mean? Like, how do I make sense of this? So it actually is very opportunistic for agents to kind of mine and make sense, and opening up some endpoints to let agents be able to kind of update the survey and optimize it in real time. There's just some really fun, exciting things there that we're focused on right now, along with like starting to expand some more use cases with the surface area. But yeah, we're shipping. I think there's definitely been an inflection point. Like I think our landing page feature that it's live for everyone, but it'll be announced next week. We built that in about 2 weeks, and we've been talking about it for about a year and just never prioritized it. And it was one of the quickest things we've built. So definitely a super exciting time, I think, to deliver value to customers and just like keep iterating as fast as possible.
I didn't realize we were going to get a big reveal on the Orita podcast. So exciting. Any other secrets?
The second thing that Kurt has delivered in 2 weeks is basically what you're saying, Matt.
V1 of fairing, and yeah.
Matt, any hard questions you want to ask Daniel, who's a doctor, before we wrap up?
No, I just want to, I've mentioned this to DB before, and this is just a personal gripe about email, just because I know you guys spend a lot of time in email. There's this problem with email today where sending more emails often makes more money, when in reality, as a consumer, I really want a better personalization page to tell the brand when I want to receive emails. And I haven't seen anyone execute that well ever.
You know who did a really cool one recently was Cricket Shirts. And they did one around Father's Day. And they said, hey, we know that certain holidays aren't for everybody, right? It's like your dad passed away, whatever it is, you're estranged. Would you like to receive less content around these holidays? Which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah. That's the start of it for sure. But like, there's this push and pull where like the marketer might not want to offer that to the consumer because it means like I'm going to be sending less.
I think so I think this is a thing where it's like, and look, I ran a brand for a decade and I sent every email to every single customer. So I'm very much so like, oh, the shit's really good. You should see it. Like, check this out. Right. So couldn't be more empathetic to the senders. But actually, all the data says when you send more, you actually make less, unless you're sending more to the right people. And so we see this now across hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands. And it's like intuitively like, yep, you can make more. And the answer is you could make more today. I rolled off a call an hour ago where I was talking to like an old line brand that's like wonderful. And the answer is like, you could make $1,000 more today if they sent an extra email, but they could have made $1,500 more in a month.
If they did,
and like made that trade off. And so it's like you hurt your
So you're solving my problem as a consumer just in a better way.
Well, 100%. It's like people are telling you that they want to receive email or like there's all the data. Like that's the only thing we solve for. And so like across all of our brands, we see it very clearly. Like it's not less is more, but for most brands, less is more. And then they earn the right over time to send more because like they have a healthier list and they let people stick around until the content appeals to them.
It's usually the way that I view it is that it's really kind of like a distribution frequency problem is that for a big brand, you probably have people who are more than willing to receive 2 emails a day from you. And then you have other ones who want to receive 0 or 1 a year. And most brands have a narrow band where they're like, everyone gets between 3 and 5. And it just like, and so it leads to this like unoptimal solution across both ends where they're over emailing a ton of people on the bottom and they're definitely under emailing a ton of people at the top. Like if your top 1% clicks at 5%, you can definitely email them more. Like it almost certainly, right? And so, and then you'll see like there's usually like guardrails that are just like more broad industry ideas than actually what the data itself will tell you on what to do there.
Or you've only seen a handful of strategies, which we mentioned before. But like Matt, the exact same thing. We just launched our SMS product. My God, it is spikier. So you'll have like some people could receive, 2 a day, literally. And some obviously never, ever, ever want to hear from you. But again, companies sit within a band and they're missing so much revenue. It's not like overspending. It's they should save the credits or the cents for the bottom and just hammer the top because the top literally is interested in the brand and really wants to engage with the brand in that channel on that day.
Are you using your cross-brand data set to do the predictiveness? That would actually
not on a PII perspective. So there's no, we've definitely seen you across 40 of our brands. There's no like, oh, we saw Matt wants to hear something.
Because then you would know that I unsubscribe all the time from SMS so quick, doesn't matter who it is.
I saw it in your eyes. Like, when we
that could be a quick, it's always because I'm like driving with my wife and it comes on a CarPlay and like, she's like, who is that? And it's some like random underwear brand or something. And she's like, why are you subscribed to this?
Yeah.
So, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the other big unsaid thing too, and actually this is kind of where you guys fit in really well is that it's not necessarily, I mean, Aaron was talking about like how sometimes emailing more can make less money, but it's also like really you email more and then the systems and the metric ways that you report more money. And that's not the same as top line revenue going up. And that I think is really hard to handle because like the most uncomfortable thing, and let's pretend that a solution like Fair didn't exist where you could ask your customers, is that like you might just actually not know how 50% or more of your revenue is generated.
Yeah.
You're doing all this marketing stuff and you actually don't really know what's going on. And that's really uncomfortable. And so instead what you could do is just be like, last touch this spend, like whatever the rule system you are. And now those dollars are assigned. And that I think is like, it's intrinsic appealing. It also helps you build your strategy, but it's also this double-edged sword of like, you now might over assign that sort of attribution. So like, that's why I think it's like important, where you guys using this other way, this orthogonal way to get at the same sort of questions, which can be like, we have lots of people on all of our brands list for prospects. So they therefore should be like, email should come up some percentage of the time on the conversion rate that you guys see. And whether it does or does not, it's like really kind of could shape like that strategy. If a brand is emailing their prospects 4 times a day and 0 post-purchase new customers ever said email converted, like that's a really interesting signal.
Yeah.
Matt,
Exactly.
the funniest thing, just very quickly, and then I know our time, I will ask people during a sales call, which is, and the hardest question is, hey, if I can make your business perform better, but your attributed email revenue drops in parallel because to DB's point, it is over attributing, would you be okay with that? And if you talk to the CEO, CFO, CMO, absolutely.
Yeah.
You talk to somebody who is gold on Klaviyo or again, any channel going up,
it is
extraordinarily hard. And so I think there's always like the incentives and like the lack of visibility, DB, I think is finally very well said. You said something good there. Matt, we are at time.
Everyone gets one a day, right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we're good. This is a good job, dude.
I can go sleep now.
Okay, thank you.
Woke up, said one good thing, and I can go back to sleep.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, Matt, we're at time. Any last words? Where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn or matt@fairing.co if anyone wants to kind of jump in. Always happy to chat, whether it's post-purchase survey or, again, any of this agentic AI stuff. Definitely spending a bit of time just trying to think of where we're going and where the space is going. So, yeah, always excited to chat. And thank you both for having us on. I feel like it's that one day in the park really changed the history here. Full circle.
Matt, thanks again for introducing me to Daniel.
We're good. For both our lives and our customers. We're all happy. Yeah.
All right.
I'll find out in 10 years the real matter there. Yeah.
All right. No comments. Matt, thank you. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Talk very soon.
Yep. See you guys.
I'm Aaron Schwartz, co-founder of Orita AI, where we help hundreds of brands like Spanx, Faraday, and Salt and Stone get the absolute most out of their customer lists. Learn more at Orita.ai or check out my interviews with the founders of Klaviyo, Birdies, Caraway, and plenty more wherever you get your podcasts.